There is a type of person you have encountered and never quite forgotten. They didn't say much. They didn't react when you expected them to. They looked at problems the way a surgeon looks at a body, with clinical detachment and precise intention. You walked away from the interaction feeling studied. That person was a deep thinker, not in the romantic sense, not the poet staring at rain, not the philosopher reciting borrowed quotes. A real deep thinker is something more unsettling than that. They are architecturally different. Their mind operates on a layer most people never access, not because they are more intelligent, but because they have developed something rarer than intelligence. They have developed patience with complexity. Most people are allergic to complexity. They want answers fast. They want resolution. They want the tension to collapse. The deep thinker has learned to live inside unresolved tension like a man who has learned to breathe underwater. This is not about becoming smarter. It is about becoming different, about rewiring the way you encounter reality so that you stop reacting to the surface of things and start reading what lies beneath them. The first thing you must understand is this. Most of what people call thinking is not thinking at all. It is pattern recognition dressed in the costume of logic. You encounter a situation. Your nervous system searches its memory for something similar. It finds a match. It generates a response. That entire process happens in milliseconds, long before the part of your brain that reasons ever wakes up. You didn't think. You executed a reflex. The deep thinker knows this about themselves. They catch the reflex before it fires. They create a gap between stimulus and response, and they live in that gap deliberately. Machiavelli understood this completely. He observed that the rulers who fell were not the ones who lacked power. They were the ones who could not delay their own reactions, who confused speed with strength, who mistook movement for strategy. The prince who reacts becomes predictable. The predictable prince becomes controllable. The controllable prince eventually becomes irrelevant. That gap between stimulus and response is not hesitation. It is architecture. It is the space where strategy is built while everyone else is busy being emotional. When someone insults you and you respond before the insult finishes landing, that is the reflex governing you. When someone presents you with a problem and you immediately offer a solution, that is the reflex governing you. When something confuses you and the discomfort becomes unbearable within seconds, that is the reflex governing you. The reflex is not wrong. It is simply insufficient. It was designed for a world that moved slowly, where threats were physical and immediate, where survival required speed above all else. But the world you are navigating now is different. The threats are slower, more abstract. They arrive as opportunities with sharp edges, as relationships that quietly hollow you out, as beliefs you have held for years that no longer serve you. Speed kills you in that world. Patience is the weapon. Here is what most people are never told about deep thinking. It is not a cognitive skill. It is an emotional tolerance. The barrier between shallow thinking and deep thinking is not intelligence. It is the ability to sit with not knowing. Shallow thinkers resolve ambiguity immediately. They reach for the first explanation that quiets the discomfort. They call it instinct. They call it common sense. They call it just knowing. What they are actually doing is self-soothing. The mind generates uncertainty, and the emotional system panics. The shallow thinker gives the emotional system what it wants: a conclusion, any conclusion, resolution at any cost. The deep thinker does something that feels almost violent at first. They refuse to resolve it prematurely. They hold the question open. They sit with the discomfort of not knowing the way you sit with physical pain that you cannot immediately fix. Acknowledging it, observing it, refusing to let it make decisions on your behalf. Machiavelli wrote that the greatest strategic errors are not made in moments of obvious danger. They are made in moments of discomfort, when the mind demands resolution and the strategist surrenders to that demand before reality has shown its full shape. The weak thinker sees one layer of a situation and acts. The deep thinker sees one layer and waits for the second, then the third, then the one beneath that, the layer where the real structure of the situation lives. Over time, something strange happens. The discomfort of not knowing decreases, not because the uncertainty disappears, but because you have trained your emotional system to understand that uncertainty is not a threat. It is simply the period before information completes itself. And when you stop rushing information, better information arrives. There is a reason that deep thinkers appear distant. It is not coldness, it is not arrogance, it is not social dysfunction, it is that they have stopped performing cognition for an audience. Most people think out loud, not because they need to, because they need to be seen thinking. They need the social confirmation that their mind is working, that their conclusions are valid, that the people around them approve of their reasoning. This is thinking as theater, and theater requires an audience. The moment you need an audience for your thinking, you have given that audience power over your conclusions. Machiavelli observed this in councils, courts, and war rooms. The advisor who needed approval spoke first and loudest. The advisor who needed nothing waited until the room exhausted itself, then spoke once, and the room went quiet. Not because his words were louder, because they were heavier. Words become heavy when they are rare, when there is no performance behind them, when the speaker has no emotional stake in whether you agree. That weight is what people mistake for intelligence. It is not intelligence, it is detachment from the outcome of the conversation. The deep thinker does not need you to validate their thinking. They have already tested it internally, against themselves, in silence, where no one could applaud or object. By the time the words leave their mouth, the thinking is already complete. What you are receiving is a conclusion, not a process. And conclusions feel different than processes. Conclusions feel final. They carry authority without demanding it. This is why silence cultivated deliberately is not emptiness. It is compression. Every hour spent thinking without speaking is an hour spent compressing raw experience into refined understanding. The man who speaks constantly is always partially processed. He is thinking at you. He is using your attention to finish thoughts he should have finished alone. The man who speaks rarely has already finished. He is delivering, not processing. Now here is where it becomes uncomfortable. Most people hearing this will understand it intellectually and change nothing, because deep thinking does not just require a new skill. It requires the death of something you have been protecting for most of your life. It requires the death of the need to be understood immediately. You have been conditioned since childhood to make yourself legible, to explain, to justify, to ensure that the people around you could follow your reasoning in real time. Because when you were young, legibility was safety. If they could understand you, they could not punish you for being strange, for being different, for operating on a frequency they couldn't access. So you learned to translate yourself downward, to compress your thinking into a format the room could process. And in doing so, you gradually stopped having thoughts that required translation. You stopped going to the depths because you knew you would have to come back up alone. Machiavelli would have recognized this immediately. He called it the trap of the court, where proximity to the crowd inevitably degrades the quality of the mind that spends too long performing for it. The prince who governs by committee does not govern. He negotiates. And negotiation is not strategy. It is compromise dressed as decision. Deep thinking requires the willingness to arrive at conclusions that the room will not applaud, to hold positions that cannot yet be explained because the explanation requires 10 more steps that you have not yet taken, to appear uncertain or unreachable rather than offer a shallow answer that satisfies the moment and corrupts the longer process. This is where most people stop. Not because the path is too difficult, because it is too lonely. There is a particular type of loneliness that only deep thinkers know. It is not the loneliness of being disliked. It is not the loneliness of being excluded. It is the loneliness of operating several moves ahead and having no one around you who is interested in where you are standing. You see the shape of a situation before it has revealed itself to the room. You recognize the structure beneath the surface. You understand why the thing that feels like a solution is actually the beginning of a different problem. And you cannot say this out loud. Not because you are arrogant, but because the room is not ready. So you wait, you watch, you say less than you know, and then the situation unfolds exactly as you saw it, and the room is surprised, and you feel nothing because surprise requires uncertainty, and you had already moved past uncertainty 3 weeks ago. Machiavelli lived this. He saw the political landscape of Florence with a precision his contemporaries could not match. He wrote the mechanisms of power before most men around him had even identified that mechanisms existed. He was not celebrated for this in his lifetime. He was exiled. He was tortured. He was dismissed. Because the room could not follow him, and what the room cannot follow, the room eventually punishes. If this is where you are, if you have ever been punished for seeing clearly, then understand that you are not broken. You are early. The deep thinker is almost always early. The world does not reward early perception. It rewards timely expression. So the discipline is not just in the thinking. It is in knowing when to release what you have seen, and how much of it to release, and in what form. Machiavelli understood this as the management of timing. He wrote that a prince must know not only what to do, but when the moment has arrived that the doing will be received. A truth delivered too early is indistinguishable from a provocation. So how do you build this? Not through technique, not through reading more, not through accumulating frameworks and mental models like furniture you arrange and rearrange without ever sitting down. You build it through subtraction. You subtract the noise first. Every hour you spend consuming the processed thoughts of others is an hour you spend not developing your own. The reading, the podcasts, the endless input. These are not building your mind. They are furnishing it, and a furnished mind is not the same as a working one. Machiavelli did not write The Prince by consuming other men's strategies. He wrote it by observing raw reality with enough patience and silence that the patterns revealed themselves to him. He went to the source. Not to the commentary on the source, not to the summary of the commentary, to the actual unmediated thing. You must develop the same practice. Sit with real situations longer than is comfortable. Resist the explanation. Resist the framework. Let the situation speak for itself before you impose language on it. This is how the deep thinker develops what appears to others as an almost supernatural ability to read people, to anticipate outcomes, to remain calm in crisis. They are not smarter, they are slower. They have learned to delay comprehension until comprehension is complete. Rather than reaching for the nearest explanation, they wait for the right one. And the right explanation, when it comes, does not feel like a conclusion. It feels like recognition, like something that was always true finally becoming visible. The final stage of this is the most difficult to describe and the most important to understand. When you have built a mind that operates this way, patient, deep, detached from the need for external validation, something shifts in how the world responds to you. Not because you have become more impressive, but because you have become less readable. Machiavelli wrote that the greatest advantage a prince could hold was the advantage of interior opacity, the condition of being genuinely difficult to predict, not because you are performing unpredictability, but because your decision-making process operates on a logic the people around you cannot fully access. When you cannot be read, you cannot be manipulated. When you cannot be manipulated, others must negotiate with you honestly. And honest negotiation always favors the person with the clearer mind. You become Without effort, without aggression, the gravitational center of every room you enter. Not because you dominate, because you cannot be moved. The unmovable person generates a kind of social weight that has nothing to do with status or volume. It is the weight of a mind that has stopped outsourcing its stability to the opinions of others. People feel this immediately. They do not know what to call it. They call it confidence. They call it authority. They call it presence. What it actually is the specific quality of a person who has spent enough time alone with hard questions that the world's chaos no longer disturbs their internal order. Here is the truth that this entire video has been building toward. Most people will never develop this. Not because they lack the capacity, because they are unwilling to pay the price. The price is discomfort held without resolution. The price is loneliness that cannot be shortcut. The price is the slow, unglamorous, invisible work of sitting with your own mind long enough to understand how it actually functions, where it lies to you, where it panics, where it reaches for comfort instead of clarity. Machiavelli paid that price in exile. He lost everything the world said mattered and discovered. In that loss, the only thing that could not be taken from him, the architecture of his own perception. That is the fortress the deep thinker builds. Not reputation, not status, not the approval of the room. A mind so thoroughly understood by its owner that it becomes a precision instrument rather than a weather vane. You are not here by accident. You found this because some part of you already knows that the surface of things is not where you are meant to live. The depth is cold. The depth is quiet. The depth is often lonely, but it is the only place where reality shows you its actual face. Go there. Stay longer than is comfortable. Come back changed. That is the psychology of the deep thinker. And now, it is yours. If you made it here, you already know. Subscribe. We are just getting started.